Cold open question of the day, Brendon Kleen. Recently, the illustrious, always seemingly working Stephen A. Smith gave his answers about who he thought should have statues in NBA cities at arenas. You can go find his list. But I want to ask you, what's your list? Who should get a statue and where?
So the way he did it was active players. That was how I thought through my answer.
Yeah, I think if someone retired at this point, I don't think you're getting one. Like, maybe there's a weird circumstance I'm not thinking off the top of my head. Like, if Philly one day wanted to do, like, an AI statue out of, like, a cultural remembrance, that's one thing. But, like, I can't think of, like, another retired guy who hasn't got one who wouldn't have already got one, right? It also seems like we do this faster now is the other thing. We don't, like Kobe's a unique circumstance, but, like, Ronaldo got the often meme one when he was alive. Dwayne Wade got one extremely fast. Like, this isn't like hey, you get it in your 60s. It's like you're 40, maybe 45, and it's like, great, you got a statue. We're going to retire your jersey and honor you now. They don't wait anymore.
So Stephen A's list was good. He had LeBron twice and Warriors guys split into two. So, I think that really illustrates how few answers there are, really. The only other one that I could think of besides what he had was Russell Westbrook in Oklahoma City.
I love that answer. Love it.
The question is, like, do you have to have won a title with the franchise for it to be at that level? But with the Thunder, obviously, nobody has won a championship. And him being the guy that stayed, and KD did win an MVP there, but Russ's, I think, is more meaningful. And the fact that he didn't leave of his own volition, right? They traded him. He may have been ready for that trade or kind of wanted it, but he saw at least through the mission.
At least got sold. It at least got sold as like, hey, like he didn't ask out, right? Like, and there's a difference in that specific sense, right? Like,
so who's your answer?
They didn't. I mean, LeBron in Cleveland's an obvious. That's a lock. Curry in Golden State is a lock. Those are the two I feel the most strong about. I could be talked into Draymond and Clay as well. I think ultimately that's in Kerr, frankly. I could be talked into LeBron in Miami. Although I kind of would just maybe rather... Like, I'd do a big three statue if you're going to do one, maybe. Like...
Yeah, if you're going to do one in Miami, although Wade already has one, right? So I don't think LeBron alone in Miami makes a lot of sense personally, but I could be wrong.
I think the place he should get one on his own is Cleveland because A, that's where he's going to have spent the most years of his career, and B,
says you. I don't know how long he'll be a Laker here. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's going to spend 10 years with Bronny on the expansion Vancouver NBA team or something. Cleveland one is just like, it's just like you have to, I think, do these very sentimentally and like pick where. It's got to be super high echelon, and I think it has to be things that mean something emotionally. And to me, the obvious two are Curry and Golden State and LeBron and Cleveland. The Russ Oklahoma City one is one that I really want to just say yes to, but it's a little less clean just because of the nature of him leaving, and I feel like so much time has gone by with him where I don't know this, but I would love to know like what the community, like what how he's remembered there now that they've hit this whole other era.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the person to answer that. I think the other one Stephen A had was Milwaukee with Giannis, and I would throw Jokic and Denver out there.
I think Jokic, but if you're going to do Jokic, those are also good ones. Giannis, especially if like both of them win another title, I think you just do it. Can we get Jokic? Can we get like Jokic like on a horse?
I was going to say with Jokic, it's like you were saying how quickly we do it these days. So
do
rapidly
it now
after retirement. Exactly. You got to do it while he's still playing because you're not getting him back stateside once he's gone. He is not leaving Europe. I think the day he retires for the rest of his life. So if you're hoping to have him at the ceremony, I think maybe you do it like tomorrow to be safe.
Yeah, BetMGM minus 350. He's not at the NBA 100 thing that he will definitely be in the top 100 players of all time when they inevitably do that again.
Yeah, he's not showing up.
Giannis, can we get Giannis a smoothie in his hand?
Sure.
I want
food accompaniment. Oreos, Chick-fil-A.
The Chick-fil-A drive-thru, yeah. Yeah, give me give me all the silliness with this. Honestly, we take this stuff seriously, and I understand why corporately they do this, but let's have some fun with these, and don't make them look like Ronaldo's either. Just make sure the face looks right more than anything else. And make it sit whoever you want. Just make the face look right. All right, on today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers are ravaged by some injuries. We'll talk about them, including Evan Mobley, that's the latest one. We got some Nuggets Suns questions coming off a very entertaining game from Tuesday night. Zion Williamson says he'll do the dunk contest, and it's award time. We're going to give you our picks for MVP, Coach of the Year, and many other awards. That's up today on the Just Basketball Show. Welcome in to the Just Basketball Show. I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. 5-star reviews only. Want to tell you, too, about our friends at Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is a player prop DFS platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports, including the NBA and the NFL. Sign up today with our code JustBasketball, and Thrive will match your first deposit up to $250. Brendan, jam-packed show today. Let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, on top of Donovan Mitchell, as we talked about on the last show, having a PRP injection to deal with a bone bruise in his knee, and the latest comments from JB Bickerstaff, I think, put some gray area into when exactly he's going to be back. He will be reevaluated, and then he said, I don't think it's going to be a month, but is it going to be next week after he's reevaluated, or is it going to be closer to that month? That's a real open question. There's not a lot of time even left in the season at this point. But then Evan Mobley, who just recently came back from knee surgery, suffered a sprained ankle against the Celtics on Tuesday, which, by the way, congratulations. Your Dean Wade prediction at the start of the year finally paid off. It took a while, but congratulations. Dean Wade outscored the Celtics by himself in the fourth quarter, so good for Dean. Evan Mobley is going to be out, according to The Athletic, will be out a while, a source told The Athletic. The injury saw him leave the Rocket Mortgage Field on crutches. He was already ruled out for the game on Wednesday that the Cavs playing Atlanta after we record this. And Evan, I think to start with Mobley, but the Cavs, this is just shaping up to be one of those seasons. I think that does happen in guys' careers, unfortunately, that doesn't go anywhere. He has officially just had a very cursed year. As other guys in his draft class have really surged and really made cases for themselves. This has been a very unfortunate year for him.
It has been. You're very big on draft class. That doesn't really impact him anymore, does it? I mean,
well, but for me, I love tracking that draft class because I think it has really worked out as a really loaded, important draft class. And it's him. It's Scotty Barnes, it's Cade Cunningham, it's Jalen Green, it's Alperen Sengun, it's Jalen. There's a lot of that class has actually spawned a lot of quality and guys that I think are going to be really important for the league. And he's also just positionally similar to some of these guys. So to me, it just is something fun to track. And you see these guys in your year three really surge. Two of those guys I named will come up later in at least contention for a possible award when we get to awards, but it's just for him, it's just not worked out.
Well, I guess the reason I question it is you're not regretting that pick if you're Cleveland.
Oh, no. I mean, I would still have him very, very high, if not first in that draft class, because I believe in him that much. It's just for him. I think it's unfortunate that where he was great early, was really good last year, was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year last year, whether you thought he should get it or not. This year has just it's going to go down as a big blah for him, unfortunately.
Well, I guess my question with Cleveland, bigger picture, because that was an impressive win that they had on Tuesday, and Dean Wade, We talked about Jared Allen as an all-star fill-in. I know the all-star game has already come and passed, but Dean Wade making a late surge for maybe all-NBA with that game.
MVP?
We'll see.
Him or Middleton, Brendan?
Between those two guys, I think it has to be at this point. But how are you feeling about the Cavs generally ahead of the playoffs? I mean, factoring these injury questions in, do you feel like do you feel better about them this time right now than you did this time last year?
It's a good question. I think they're showing us toughness that I don't know if they had last year. I think last year you might have seen them just kind of fade and have these injuries kind of define their season. They've shown, I think, a real fight and a buy-in and a toughness that I don't know if we knew that they exactly had. The Boston win's a really good example of that. They're not playing that well. Mitchell's out. I think in other situations you could have seen a coach, I think, pretty reasonably say, you know what, we play tomorrow night. We're not going to beat the best team in the league tonight. We don't have it. Let's pull our guys left with six minutes left to go. I'm sorry to the Kelsey brothers who are deleting Bud Lights on the sideline right now. We're going to worry about beating Atlanta tomorrow. And instead, they wrote it out. They got hot. I don't know if I could say I feel better because there's still, I think, this lingering wondering like what is to come for them in the playoffs, and I think a lack of confidence that they're going to step up and deliver in that moment. And at the same time, what are these injuries going to look like in a month? Are you even going to have, like, if it's, let's say this is a month for Mobley, that's right before the playoffs, what are you going to get from him at that point? And Darius Garland, frankly, just hasn't been good enough. And that's a big concern. So I think it's a TBD would be my answer to you.
Are they deeper? I mean, let's just assume, right, that let's say Donovan and Mobley
they're deeper.
Are ready for game one of the first round. They're deeper?
Yeah, because number one, they didn't have anyone as good as Strus last year. Danny Green played playoff minutes for this team last year, Brendan. Danny Green, who's not played in the league at all this year. Legend, but was old last year, and he's older now. Isaac Okoro is better than he was last year. That guy's going to deserve to get some kind of salary this summer. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but he deserves to get some money. That's just a straight-up good role player now in a way he wasn't. I don't think we thought of him exactly that way last year. Niang gives them some stuff time and again. Sam Merrill's honestly, Brendan, like good. Like truly, one of the biggest gripes I have with the Cavs right now is I think they need to find a way to play Sam Merrill for shooting purposes, and they just often don't. And so I think they are deeper.
Game one last year against the Knicks. Osman gets 19 minutes. LeVert gets 18. Coro gets 23. Wade gets 8. Rubio gets 5.5. You look right now, obviously not all these guys will be playing. Let's say Greg Porter is out of the rotation. Let's say Sam Merrill plays significantly less, maybe doesn't play. We'll see. But you're still talking about a better version of Okoro, a real version of Wade, Niang, and I guess that's kind of it. That's the difference. And Strus, who you mentioned.
Strus being, I think, the biggest one. He's also hurt right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to feel better about it, and I think their lack of depth was an underrated reason of why they lost that series to New York last year, right? It wasn't just the rebounding or the, shying away or the offensive haplessness. It was also just they didn't have guys. They didn't have minute 1 to minute 48, the horsepower, the manpower to obviously match a Knicks team that is very deep, but really just it felt like the curtains opened and all of a sudden you're like, wow, they don't have 8 guys, right? And now I think they do. So I feel good about it relative to last year as well. I just think the thing you said originally is probably my biggest concern, which is I don't know what's going on with Darius Garland. And if he's not, star level, all-star level, able to match what the second, third best guys on opposing teams are doing on a night-to-night basis, make other players better, help the pace, shoot well, all the things that he does, then you're talking about the top level not being good enough, and kind of doesn't matter what the depth is like at that point.
The big concern for me with Garland is the 2-point percentages and his ability to get shots off. Right now, he's actually doing a better job of late of getting off more threes than he had earlier in the year, which was a big ick for me. Does that make me Gen Z that he used the word ick? You can decide. His assist to turnover ratio is trending back in the right direction. Those are two really positive things if you watch him play. At times, the decision-making is still like a little not exactly optimal. Like he threw a couple passes that I just couldn't really understand late in the game against Boston, even though they won. Dean Wade really bailed him out on a miss with an offensive rebound. That's what MVPs do. But he's not getting shots off inside the paint, and he's not really scaring teams inside the paint in any real way. That to me is just waiting to be exploited. And it's I think that if you're looking at like one of the big differentiators between him and Mitchell, and what allowed the Cavs to succeed while Garland was out, where I don't know if they can succeed in the same exact way with Mitchell out and Garland in, is Mitchell is able to, even if Garland pound for pound is a better passer and creator for others and more creative, Mitchell's penetration and his explosiveness and everything he can do as a scorer means he can generate good open threes for other players. Right now, Darius Garland just can't do that. And that's just for even the next couple of weeks. Let's say Mitchell misses 2 more weeks. That's going to make it harder for them just to win basketball games the next 2 weeks.
For sure. Want to jump to my neck of the woods here?
Yeah, so this was, Brendan, to me, one of them. This game just whipped. This game absolutely ruled. What did you take away from Phoenix and Denver?
I think at the biggest possible level, it's a little bit of a weird thing to say, given that the Nuggets are the team that eliminated Phoenix last year. But I would say they might be the team in a season where the Suns are almost unknowable, very inconsistent, and are going to be a question mark all the way up until basically they have to prove it in a postseason environment. The Nuggets are a team that they may actually be able to feel like they match up with pretty well, is my takeaway from this game. And they played in December, and they were both incredibly depleted. I think Murray and Gordon missed that game on Denver's side, and Booker and Beal missed it on Phoenix's side, but it was still very close. And I think the thing that transported across both games that does matter here is Jusuf Nurkic takes this matchup seriously, handles Jokic relatively well in the ways that I think you need to, and is kind of proving that if you're in the West and you feel like you have to have somebody against Jokic, they have that. And a lot of the other stuff was pretty even in last year's series. So, you know, we could get into the specifics of Grayson Allen going off or what Durant did late or the fourth quarter stuff and all that, but at the 30,000-foot view type of level, I actually feel like the Suns match up pretty well with what I still think of as the best team in the West. And as weird as their season has been, that has to give you some optimism.
I think one thing that I will say just about Nurk specifically is I think he's just been better for them than I expected. I don't think he was particularly good at the back end of the Portland run, but I think the way he's played in Phoenix, where his role is very defined, he doesn't need to take a lot of shots. He needs to be a connector as a passer. He needs to get offensive rebounds. He needs to defend the paint and be a big body. He has done that, I think, more often than not pretty well. And I think the Nuggets thing is just there. I don't know if he says this particularly publicly, Brendan, but I feel like that's always just going to be. He said he takes it seriously. I think that's a kind way of saying he probably takes it personally, because I think there is a known rivalry with Jokic, at least on his side. I don't know if Jokic gives a shit, and that he played in Denver first, and they decided to trade him. I think there is just something there that he taps into for these matchups for whatever reason. I thought, Brendan, the most impressive part of this game to me for Phoenix on a macro level was that they won this despite it not being the most efficient game. They were out with Booker, who's obviously out with an injury right now. But it wasn't like Durant and Beal were overwhelmingly efficient. Durant was 14 of 34. Beal was 8 of 18. You know, Grayson Allen, I think, is kind of the reason, and Royce O'Neal on a 2 of 5 from 3 night, but Grayson Allen being 8 of 12 from 3 are kind of reasons you can survive the inefficiencies of your two main guys in a game like this. But Denver still put up 107 They got good shooting nights from some different guys. Jokic was 4-7 from 3 in this game, but really wasn't particularly good on
right?
twos.
You said it wasn't an incredibly efficient night from the Suns, but they won because it also wasn't for Denver, right? Denver's throwing the ball around the gym in the first half, and I do think Nurkic affected Jokic, but there's also still a massive difference, as we saw last year, between March Jokic and May Jokic. So I don't think that was like they solved the guy. I think he just wasn't playing at his max intensity level and everything else. So to me, it was neither team's best, but again, without Booker and the resolve that they had to show to uncrumble in the fourth quarter and then dominate in overtime, I still think you should feel very good about it if you're the Suns, but this wasn't some kind of like download this game and have it be, playing at all times on all the screens in the Suns practice facility as this shining example of how good they can be. They just kind of figured it out. And that has to happen sometimes, but it'll be probably a different type of environment, a different set of circumstances if they play in the playoffs because of all those examples, all those reasons we're talking about. It was a unique game.
The last thing I'll ask about it, and just how these teams match up to you, Brendan, is do you feel like you have a better grasp now than you did a month ago at the start of the season, whatever kind of check mark you want to do? Do you feel like you have a better idea of what the Suns are capable of defensively against Denver? I think you're right to identify just that there was a little bit of sloppiness from Denver. I think they can be prone to that just at times when they're not fully locked in. But we just don't expect this team to be sloppy in any way when it really comes down to it. We just don't. I don't expect that out of them. But do you feel like you have learned anything or have a better gauge of what Phoenix can do defensively, which is the thing I think you correctly from the outset of us talking about these two teams identified as the big unknown, the big thing? Can Phoenix be good enough defensively to actually win this series and go at them in this way?
No, but I kind of think the things we're focusing on, maybe specifically what they do against Jokic and then how their offense looks, is really what's going to decide it. So it's kind of funny because at the same time that you could say the Suns' defense was always going to be the biggest question mark, right, it only needs to get to a certain level. And coincidentally, Denver last year is the perfect example of that. They were 17th in defense in the regular season, and even in the playoffs, they weren't elite. But they just had to kind of execute, develop an identity, and get stops when it was important. The Suns are kind of facing a similar test for themselves. But this Nuggets team, I think the way you beat them is mostly to outscore them, right? Like, you can't let Jokic be the 40, 15, and 15 guy that he kind of can be at times. You can't allow that, so you have to provide some level of resistance. But otherwise, I think we saw, my feelings on the nonsense about people trying to discredit and discount the Suns' performance against them last year in the playoffs. But I think the Suns kind of proved that, right? Like, the Lakers got swept by this team because they didn't have enough offense. The Wolves could only steal one game off of them because they couldn't keep up. The Suns can. And I think that's going to decide how competitive that possible series is. It's just, really, to me, the defensive side is Nurkic, the kind of head of the snake. Is that working for the Suns? And in this one it was, and they were able to come up with the win. What do you think? I just don't see as much as you're right that the defense is the thing to watch. I think we just know they're not going to probably... are the Suns able to get to a defensive level from what you feel like we've seen this year, even equivalent to what Denver did in last year's playoffs? Because I kind of don't think they're even capable of that.
No, I don't, and I also think the Royce O'Neal trade is kind of a slight acknowledgement of that, right? Like, it's like, we kind of know what we are. Let's go get an additive piece on the cheap who's going to accentuate what we do really well. It's like, right? Now you don't just need...
Like, does that get them there?
Well, but I think offensively, that's sort of my point, is that I think it's another offensive lever you're acknowledging that you want to have that option to pull that lever and have another guy who's going to be comfortable just hoisting up shots and making threes potentially to swing a series for you because you could have went and tried to get another defender could have called. I think he was hurt at the time, but call like Torrey Craig, bring him back, like something like that, and just try to get that kind of player. They tried that with like Keita Bates-Diop and Yuta Watanabe, like more guys that were just like solid positional defenders, and it didn't really work. So what did they do? They went and get Royce O'Neal, and now it's on top of your big three, which is an offensive, all offense, all the time big three. You have Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen as your spot-up shooters. And I think the idea to me feels like, let's do enough defensively. Let's at least just compete. Frank Vogel's going to demand competition. Nurkic can do a lot for us in the 30 minutes he's going to play. Maybe there's some series where you just play Durant at the 5 and you just kind of roll with that and see what it gets you to. But I think it's really saying we need to make a ton of shots. We need to be dangerous on offense at all times. We need to have shooting all over the floor. And I think it really could come back to a situation, Brendan, where if they play Denver in the playoffs, can they just do enough on defense to frustrate Denver just enough, and then can Booker and Durant just do Booker and Durant shit, and particularly like on pull-up threes, on catch and shoot 3 opportunities, and in the middle of the floor. Like I think those are the deciding factors. So I don't think we know defensively, but I think we have a pretty educated guess that they I think of themselves as not going to ever be a great defensive team that's ever going to be exactly good enough to be the kind of team they maybe thought they needed to be coming into the
they've
year.
been mixing in a little more zone, and I think O'Neal has helped a little on defense, even if I think you're right that his value is on both ends, even if we think of him. I think he's one of those guys, reputationally and like perception-wise, it's just different than what he actually is. So we'll see what his real kind of ultimate value is, but he's clicked right into place there. And then I guess to me, the real, like from this matchup or any matchup, they don't have anybody to guard a guy like Jamal Murray. And so he was good in this game, but I wouldn't say great. And he was a killer against them in last year's playoffs. So that's a problem they don't have a solution for, really. And then just in this game, Gordon was a shell of himself, just didn't really make an impact, wasn't great against Durant, didn't really hit the glass, couldn't make shots, so I don't expect that to continue. And he was obviously amazing for them all last year, but especially in the postseason, doing the little things. So, it was a good test. I think the Suns should feel proud, but I guess it doesn't enormously change, as very few games do in March, how I feel about them.
All right, in a little bit of fun news, we're going to hit this one quickly. Zion Williamson says he'll do the dunk contest if he's voted in as an all-star. But I'm just going to say this now. I'm just going to be honest. Generally I'm pro-election security. I think they should just rig it. They should just rig this for Zion so he does a dunk contest.
I'm all for it.
Next year, Golden State. Let's go.
Let's do it.
I think Mac McClung's tired of Mac McClung based on how he got asked about doing it again. You know what I mean? This is not where I thought this was going to go, but I think Mac McClung, based on how he even talked about doing the dunk contest a second time, does not want to be defined as like the white guy who's really good at dunking, which I can very much understand. And now he just wants to hoop.
Yeah.
But if he does it a third time, like it's officially just like we're in gimmick territory for you, my guy. So I hope for his sake we just don't see him do it again unless he gets like $1 million up front in a briefcase.
I mean, these guys are absurdly competitive, so of course he's going to have a different perspective on his own career than any of us would. But I mean, it's already locked in. Like these 2 dunk contests are going to be the first line of his Wikipedia page for the rest of his life. But setting aside a non-NBA player. I mean, Zion's made an all-star team, so this isn't exactly like him hedging to the point of it not actually being possible, right? Like, this is not Bull saying, like, I'll do the dunk contest if I make the all-star team. Like, Zion was an all-star during COVID, and he very well could get there again. I kind of hope this is just the gateway to him eventually doing it anyway, but maybe that's too far-fetched, but it's like he's leaving it open, and it's up to all of us to just, bully him into doing it. He did it like every year in high school, right? That's where a lot of those highlights came from once upon a time. Like, just get back out there. Do literally the same dunks, and I'm sure you would win because you're going to be against like Jacob Toppin and whoever.
Yeah, we're gonna get like Mac. It's tough. We just let's get like I'll do a G League dunk contest on All-Star Weekend. Like I'm fine with that. The G League should just get promoted in any way. I don't know where you air it or what time you do it at, but like next year, let's just get like we should have done this after the All-Star like fan cast, like who we put in the dunk contest next year. But like Zion would have been on the list.
Zion could do a basic like windmill dunk and outscore whatever Jaylen Brown was doing with his glove and whatever video montages were happening on the court. Like that's, I think, what is kind of funny about all the backlash to the dunk contests and like all the old heads, so to speak, who are like, well, every dunk's been done, so who cares anymore? It's like, well, maybe so, but a lot of the dunks we remember are not because they were some sort of unforeseen, one-of-a-kind things. It was just awesome athletes who were superstars who just did crazy stuff that was fun to watch. That's kind of the idea with Zion. I don't think Zion's like going to invent a dunk. I just want to see him do it. Like that's really all there is to it here. So that's like kind of the baseline, and I don't even think he needs to put too much thought into it and could put on an awesome show and people would tune in because it's Zion Williamson. He's like still one of the most famous NBA players there is, despite some weird couple of years for him. So like just we gotta just rally. We gotta bully him into it. That's the mission from now till like January of next year.
When's the next time they're doing All-Star Weekend in Dallas? Maybe that's how you get.
Has not been announced yet. Maybe that's our one hope. I mean, he's getting into his mid-20s, so we got to get him in there soon. But maybe there's a sweet spot where Adam Silver can kind of move some chess pieces around, get that going, save the viewership, save the ratings. Maybe that's in the contracts with like Amazon for the new TV deal. Is like you guys get the dunk contest. The All-Star game will be in Dallas. Zion will be in the dunk contest in 2029. It has been said. It is written.
You get like maybe knowing how cheap he is, and he would call himself cheap, so I don't think that's exactly like a mean thing to say. Maybe get LeBron a dude if you just give him like a free year of Prime.
Save him $150.
Yeah. It's like LeBron, free 2-day shipping if you do the dunk contest. Save you $150. He'd be like, I'm there.
Perfect.
Let's do it. All right, let's get into NBA awards next. But first, got to tell you about our friends at Homage. Homage is the ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company with NBA and WNBA licenses with vintage-inspired designs from the NBA and WNBA and all other kinds of licenses that pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and popular culture. Use our link below to make your purchase and support the Just Basketball show. They have a ton of great stuff. They have these MLB starter jackets, and I am constantly staring at. They're beautiful. Obsessed with that, and when I get to Columbus next week, I'm gonna finally get to get my Columbus Crew MLS Cup Champions T-shirt that from Homage that a friend purchased that I've been waiting to get for a while. So I'm excited about that. It's absolutely just going to be a staple in my rotation. So check out Homage. Use our link below. Support us at the Just Basketball Show. Brendon, NBA awards. I listed these out just kind of, frankly, all over the place in terms of our document. How do you want to like build to MVP? Do you want to start with like the least exciting one? Like how do we want to do this?
Let's start with MVP. We can bounce around from there and throw in a less exciting one potentially afterward. But I think you got to start with the only award that I think people fully top to bottom care about outside of All NBA, which I don't think we're going to do right now. So who do you have at the top of the MVP?
We talked about him. It's Nikola Jokic. I think this is Jokic's award to lose, Brendan. I think he has been the best player in the league this year. This would have frankly probably been Embiid if Embiid was going to be eligible.
Yeah, take
but
away
he's not.
Probably.
Jokic
Embiid
is
would
the
have won
leader.
this award if he stayed healthy.
Yeah, monster season that he was having. Jokic is, last time I looked, plus 22 per 100 possessions with him on the floor. that is easily the best figure in the league for players of a certain minutes total. He's not been quite as good with true shooting as of last year, but he's still just kind of controlling the entire game. He's still the most clear way to an elite offense in the league based on one single player. The statistical case is there. The Nuggets are really, really good. Very well could win the title again. I just think that guy is the best player in the NBA right now. I think it's him. And I think there are other guys you can make cases for. I have a list of 3 other guys that I would say I have in like my inner circle. Really 2 in the inner circle, 1 guy right kind of in between, and then a 4th guy who I think could get there with a late season surge. But to me, this is Jokic's award to lose. Yeah,
it's funny. You mentioned something that I was having to fight against myself, building out what the case for, or, I mean, there's not much of a case against him, but it's the versus last year kind of ideas or the versus previous seasons. It's like, well, that doesn't really matter for winning the MVP this year, right? But it is kind of tempting with a guy that is so great, and that's where he is. Like, you almost find yourself picking nits or comparing and contrasting because he's just at the pinnacle, the prime of a legendary all-time type of career. And it's funny to me how quickly the conversation has changed, where last year it felt like everyone was finding as many reasons as possible to not give it to him. And now we've circled back to like, it's just staring us in the face, and it feels like anything you say to take credit away from him just feels kind of silly. Like, he just did that in one fell swoop with what he did in the postseason last year. And so I tend to agree with you. He is he has minus odds to win it at BetMGM. No one else is really even sniffing his odds. And it feels like a year where, for better or worse, with the Embiid injury, with parity from top to bottom everywhere, and with the Celtics not having a great candidate, as we talked about with Tatum on Tuesday's show, that who's the best guy in the league is kind of just going to be where I think a lot of voters go. And it's Jokic. We know that. Yeah, look, he won the title last year. I think that was that kind of validated him. Maybe I'm missing something just because I'm not using certain social media platforms as much as I was, and kind of avoid some of the nonsense, Brendan. But I don't feel like we've gotten like the Jokic outrage thing we got all of last year ever since he won the title. Like, I feel like that has just kind of made him bulletproof in a lot of ways. Like, maybe that changes, I mean, but I don't hear been there if Embiid stayed healthy, right? I know. I think Embiid would have had it with a bullet, but I can bet you, judging from, with all due respect and love and peace to all of them, how annoying Nuggets fans can be, that there would have been some vitriol. But now it just feels like, who are you really going to pick? Like, I think that's, to me, maybe where we can take this. Who did you have second? Do we have the same person? Okay, so Shea. I did not have Shea.
Oh, that's right. You're Chris Middleton.
Chris Middleton's first. I mean, we always preface every MVP conversation with that he is at the top. But I actually had his teammates second. In all actuality here.
Well, okay, I just want to... If people are tuning in for the first time and are wondering why I'm giving Brendan shit about Chris Middleton...
It's just an in-joke of the show now. It's fine. Brad Rowland knows. Anyone who listened to that episode knows, and that's what it is. I'll check Chris Middleton's on-off real quick as we're going here and see if the king still has his crown. But I have Giannis second.
So I think that's a really good case. I'll tell you, I think he's third for me. Do you have Shea third?
Yeah, I do. And I just, like, it's weird, and it just is because I'm a nerd about this stuff and, like, care about talking about it. But the thing I'm most passionate about within this whole MVP conversation is that Shea is not the MVP. And that's like a very asshole move by me. It's not like I really am trying to knock him down a peg. I mean, I think we did a show with Wes Goldberg a while back where I was just like literally writing a fucking poem to the dude on the show. I love Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I just don't think he's the MVP. So I think if he were to win it, that would be maybe the biggest shock of anybody to me personally, or the biggest... I guess I would just disagree with it most strongly of any of the top 4 guys, really. I don't think when we talk about what value really is, I have a hard time looking at what Shea is as a player, what the Thunder have been as a team, and what his season has looked like, and saying that's the most valuable thing in the league is having Shea on the court for you. You can talk me out of it if you feel differently, but I think we're just kind of basing it off of stats maybe a little bit too much with that guy and some clutch stuff, if I'm being honest.
Look, I mean, I'm not going to lie. That's kind of the crux of my argument. So if you want to critique that, I think that's fair. I just think that guy on a team that good, for how important he is to that team and how that team all year had just been consistent and winning, and he's the driver of so much of that, in addition to J-Dub and Mark Daigneault is doing a great job with that team and everything else you could say about the Thunder, Chet. I think Shea is just ultimately the real one who is at the crux of everything they are doing. So to me, I want to reward that. I want to reward a guy who has helped that team ascend in a real way, has been at the forefront of that. I think is just one of the best players in the league now. Maybe he's a little more like Tatum-y in some ways in terms of his candidacy than I'm maybe acknowledging here. I think that's kind of interesting comp of why you would have him and not Tatum, is just from the similarity of the arguments, I think. But I just want to reward him for being as good as he has. But I mean, Giannis to me is a very close third because he has been unbelievable despite the Bucks being kind of a mess at times.
Well, here's where I would go. I mean, I think to comp Shea to Tatum, his playmaking is a lot better. And I think that the reliability and consistency and, the fact that it does roll over into the clutch more naturally of his go-to scoring ability just puts him at another level.
Because he has that old school interior pull-up mid-range game and the footwork there, while Tatum is so dependent on, I mean, Brendan, honestly, I don't know how much flack he got for this from people, but Jason Tatum had a chance to beat the Cavs the other night and kind of stamp that game out, and he ended up doing something very silly, which is he kicked his foot out on a very wild pull-up when he didn't need to do it. And I could guarantee you in that same spot, if it's Shea in that spot and he needs to ice the game, I don't think Shea is fading away. He's going to go up with a confident, composed mid-range pull-up shot to win a game. Tatum just doesn't do something.
Yeah, Tatum had 3 plays down the stretch of that Cavs game. He passed it back on a drive, I think, to Porzingis when he had a wing between him and the basket. Took a really long catch-and-shoot 3 when there was an open lane to the basket attacking a closeout, and then had that last one. So, yeah, I mean, I just think with Shea, that's what, to me, clearly puts him above. He gets to the rim a ton. He gets to the free throw line a ton. He just has a control. He kind of has the game on a string in a way that you never really would say Tatum does. I think the best case for Shea to me is that. It's the level of control that I think he plays with, and patience and deliberation. I compared him to Kawhi when we were originally singing his praises when it became clear the type of season that he was having, and I stand by that. I guess where I would go, and the reason I have Giannis above is, one, I think Giannis, even though the defensive effort and impact is maybe less consistent than it used to be back when he was a perennial defensive player of the year candidate, it still has a higher ceiling just because of how big he is and everything else than it does for Shea. And offensively, I mean, with Shea on the court this year, the Thunder have a 123.2 offensive rating. With Giannis on the court, the Bucks have a 122.9 offensive rating. So it's really not that different. And their individual numbers are comparable. So I just sort of take all of that into consideration, and the fact that the Bucks have been so broken for most of the year, and Giannis has been able to rise above that, and I just kind of give him the credit. I mean, he's shooting 62% from the field, averaging a career-high 6.3 assists without his turnovers going up much, and just putting this team on his back and finally making a run post-All-Star break to actually have the kind of standings and the record back up his individual performance. So that's my case, but I think it's going to be Jokic and then these two guys and Luka in some order behind that. I kind of think we have it set in stone.
Bucks Celtics is coming up soon. If Giannis has a big game in that game and the Bucks beat Boston, I think you're going to have some juice behind Giannis in a real way for this down the stretch. I think that's very, very possible. I don't think this is, as much as like we have just gone to defaulted to Jokic, Brennan, I do not think this is fully solidified as of yet. I think there's still time for something weird to happen here. Not weird, but something that isn't quite on the table yet. With
Do you think Giannis is underrated at this point?
Yes. I think every star player, honestly, Brennan, gets to a point where we underrate them and take them for granted a little bit. I think it's kind of inevitable with the way our brain works. We get used to them, but I think we don't often marvel just how absurd these guys are. We're going to get there with Jokic. We got there with LeBron. We got there with Duncan. Partially because Duncan's just like kind of classically boring. We got there. We're going to get there with Jokic. We're going to get there. I think we're there with Giannis. Like, I think this just happens. Yeah. Like, I think sometimes, like, we look at even, like, Steph Curry and what he does, and it's like, he's still an alien, even if he's not maybe at his apex anymore, but he does stuff that few other guys can do. And it's just like, why are we, like, not freaking out about some of the stuff Curry does? It's because he's been doing it for 10 years. I mean, I think that happens with Durant, too. Durant does stuff that I'm just like, holy shit. Like, that he elicits something out of me, but we take it for granted because we just see it for so long.
With Giannis, he won his MVP so early. And then he won a championship, and then it was just like he kind of had just checked every box, and now it's like he's at that point that I agree Jokic is probably going to be at soon, where it's like the only thing they're chasing is like, okay, are they going to be the 20th best player of all time or the 5th? You know, and that's just a stratosphere that becomes hard to measure. But then look, you zoom out at the end of a career, and it's like, hold on, LeBron only won how many MVPs, or you know, and then we regret that we didn't do it right in real time. So it's a funny place to be. But which award do you want to do next?
I want to do Executive of the Year because I think this is the easiest. This was the easiest one for me, and I just want to do it quickly. It's Brad Stevens, and there's none in the argument to me. Like, yes, his roster was already really good. It wasn't all built by him, but he made trades to get Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and shake up the identity of that team and evolve it, and was bold enough to do it and have the gumption to go all in and spend and probably spend in the future to keep his team together and build and shake up its identity in some way. Trade Marcus Smart, a cultural touchstone of that Celtics team for so long, and his team's the prohibitive favorite to win the finals. He did a really good job of evolving this team in a spot that it's often very, very hard to evolve teams at when you get to a certain level with a certain number of spend. It's Brad Stevens. That's Executive of the Year.
No, I don't think so either. I would just say, like, to agree with and build on the point you made, you said it wasn't all built by him. I think you mean it wasn't all built by him this year, but really it was all built by him since he took over 2.5 years ago. He got Horford back. He makes the Derek White trade. He obviously does what he did last summer that he would be qualifying for with Holiday and Porzingis, and you know, has drafted a lot of these guys at this point. Like, it really is like kind of crazy to zoom out and realize how much this roster has changed since he took over. But if you're kind of looking at it as a little bit of a cumulative honoring of him too, I think even that case would be even better for him. So yeah, I think he'll be there for sure. And we talked about it with the career he's putting together across all the different jobs that he's had. It's very, very impressive. Is his protege winning Coach of the Year for you? Joe Maz taking home the hardware? What do you think?
Maybe I'm just a Thunder guy, Brennan. I went Mark Daigneault.
Yeah, it's Mark Daigneault. I agree. I don't think it's Missoula, but I have...
Oh, I just can't. I just mispronouncing things all over the place here.
I think that's what it is. I've heard Thunder people say it, and I just try to, seize the experts. But look, I think, to me, it's very close. I feel like Daigneault's the runaway favorite in the betting markets. I feel like it should be a little closer than that, but I have the order the same way. I have Daigneault, Missoula, Finch. I think we kind of underrate Missoula, we underrate any coach of a highly talented team, and I think we just sort of assume it all works. But then you look and it's like, well, Adrian Griffin got fired after 40 games, so it's not that easy, right? So, like, I think you got to give Mazzulla a little more credit. And some of the stuff, I think, especially the way that he's incorporated Holiday and Porzingis, just not like seamlessly is almost not even a good enough word. It's like he had a perfect vision for what those guys were going to be for this team. And not only did it work, but it made them significantly better. Like, they're doing different stuff than they've done in their various stops in their careers on a team with a lot more pressure to execute, and it's happening every night. I mean, at some point that's coaching. It's not just talent. So I would probably have it a little closer to equal, but it feels like they acknowledge it's the narrative. We know how these things go. He's going to get it.
Joe Maz, I think, to your point about seamless, I think it feels like Porzingis and Holiday have always been there. It's like if you plop someone down who hadn't watched that team very much or just was like unaware of the Celtics, you'd be like, this team's been together for like 5 years, right? And you'd be like, well, kind of, but these two guys are new, and it feels like they've always been there. And it's worked
so well that you're almost like, should he be leaning on them more? You know, like that's the level it's at already, which is pretty impressive. So, yeah.
It wouldn't shock me also if just Drew Holiday, like, honestly, like Celtics Bucks, where it's Drew Holiday, comes down to like Dame trying to score like a pull up three and Drew Holiday. It's just like I would like that personally.
Same, and I hope we're headed there.
Yeah, it feels like
let's do six man next
with how things are breaking these. All right, okay.
It's a rough group here.
Ugh. It's not great, Bob.
I intentionally didn't look at the odds for this one, but I don't. Yeah, okay. All right, I wasn't too far off, but I actually brought this one up for a reason. The name that I have on my top three right now, heading into the last month of the season, is not on this list, and it's Al Horford.
Yeah, he's not like on. I did some reading on like to kind of like crowd check myself against other ballots, and it is weird that he's just not in any of these lists. But Brendan, I think we just vote on 6 man of the year, not the pejorative we, as just like who scores a lot off the bench. Like it really is kind of like the Jamal Crawford award.
Yeah, it's been that way for a while, right? But I mean, I think the guy that I have first obviously fits that billing, but I also think is very, very deserving, and another player whose praises we've sung all season, which is Malik Monk. And he's another one where I know I was just saying we shouldn't do this with Jokic, or that I don't like judging guys based on previous, like, oh, they're even better than last year. It's like, well, that doesn't really matter for their awards candidacy this year. But for him, it almost feels like you kind of have to say it. Like, this guy is in year 7 of his career and somehow keeps improving. And his improvement, I think, is fundamental to why he's so valuable to them and why he's been so huge for them off the bench. His three-point shooting bumped up in terms of volume and efficiency. He basically became their backup point guard. Like, compared to where he was his last year in Charlotte, the last year of his rookie contract, he's close to tripling his assists per game from that year. And just feels like he's in so much more control to where you really can put out units that he is the center of for the Kings in a way that you wouldn't have been able to in the past. And I do think that kind of matters for 6 man of the year. I think there's some people who view it as like the guy who can slide in with the starters the best. I kind of like it to be like, no, that is your reserve player who can keep the game afloat when the starters are either not out there or not all of them are out there, and you feel comfortable with it. I mean, that's kind of the traditional definition of this thing, and Monk fits that maybe better than anyone else in the NBA right now.
I don't really like that we're chalk, Brendan, but I also have Malik Monk.
I figured. That's why I kind of
we're
wrapped a little bit there, laid down some bars on Malik. I figured we were... You know, we've adopted his team. We'd be haters if we didn't have him.
No reserve, Brendan, is averaging more fourth quarter points or minutes than Malik Monk.
It's like very much roster construction concern for them that they rely on him so much in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, I'm not going to knock him for that. The dude's excelling in his role. I mean, great. It's not his fault they have to play him so much, and he's, born with a small frame and all those things. Like, he's hooping, so what am I going to say?
Other names on my list for me, Norman Powell, who I have as number 2 on my list for this award. Then I have Tim Hardaway Jr., and then I have Naz Reid from the Minnesota
So I had
Timberwolves.
Monk, Horford, and then LeVert.
Yeah, honestly, I might just be too close to the sun on Karis LeVert, but I don't really see it. If you watch the Cavs Okoro is often the more impactful bench piece for the Cavs, is what I would say. Like, it's not quite like the Al Horford thing, because Horford is much more integral to like a title contender team than Okoro is on whatever the Cavs are going to shape out to be. But I think Okoro is more important to the Cavs a lot of the time, and should frankly be trusted more than LeVert at times. So I just kind of disqualified LeVert for that reason.
That's fair. I love Naz Reid. I think he is just, honestly, at the end of the day, in a little bit too small of a role and doesn't necessarily have the production to match up. He just happens to play on a team where 2 of the 3 best players are also at his position. And then I like Norman Powell, but to me, his game is so predicated on shooting that it's just hard for me to like have him at that spot, although I guess kind of the same thing can be said for Horford. He's just a little better defensively, I guess. But yeah, it's a weird year. It was a weird year last year too. It feels like benches are just not I don't know. Maybe it's just the parity and the spread of all the guys. It's just like there's so much talent on a lot of these teams that like the 6th, 7th men it's just not gonna matter as much as maybe it used to.
Maybe we just also need like a reckoning with how we vote for this award. If I'm being honest,
but is there
I
a candidate you're like dying to put on your list that would be more modern? I mean,
the Horford one is kind of like the one, frankly. Like there was just a campaign for Al, and like you just like, look, this guy actually contributes to winning, and it's not just about points, and you like kind of redefine what makes a good bench guy. I also just think that's like wishful thinking, because we just live in a world where we look at who scores the most off the bench, and frankly, no one has enough time to watch every team, every game, and understand the intricacies of bench guys.
All right, which one do you want to do next?
Let's do Defensive Player of the Year, because if we're going to be chalk, this is kind of the one where I wonder if we ended up being chalk.
Okay. It felt like last year this was up there with MVP as one of the more fun races between Bam and Jaren and Draymond and Mobley. There was like, you could have put an AD. That's like 5 guys who I think were all deserving winners. This season, I'm like, who the hell's good on defense? And I think it just kind of speaks to the way that offense is fucking going crazy, that it's hard to say one guy is like this stopper because no one is. But I think the number 1 has to be the same for most people. Are you and I mean, who's your number 1 here? Yeah.
It's Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, of course it's Gobert. He's going to win it. But I think it gets interesting from there.
It's just not fun. It's just like, it's not fun. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, look, good on you, Rudy Gobert. Congratulations, you're getting another one of these. It's just like the least exciting thing in the world to be like, yes, Rudy Gobert is again at the mountaintop of NBA defenders. The Minnesota Timberwolves, the best defensive league this whole year. Rudy, it's you. Like, it's just, that's not fun, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, one interesting thing. So, Gobert is like far and away, if you look at defensive rating when a player is on the court, nobody is even sniffing him right now. He's averaging, it's like just shy of 109 points per 100 possessions allowed when he's on the court for Minnesota. I was having a hard time finding anyone lower than 112 who plays real minutes. Like, that's how head and shoulders he is, just in that stat. But obviously, he has the blocks, and he has the team being number 1 in defense, and their team is number 1 in defense by a mile. Like, it feels like his case is pretty bulletproof. If he wins it, Chris, he'll join Dikembe Mutombo and Ben Wallace as the only 4-time winners in NBA history. That's pretty cool.
It's going to be amazing when like people don't want to put him in the Hall of Fame right away because they're just like they don't like Rudy Gobert. Like that's generally what it feels like is going to happen with him. Ultimately, it's like he gets in on year 3 on his ballot, despite like historical defensive like accomplishments. Brendan, number 2 on my list. I have Bam.
Me too.
That's where I think this gets really fun. That fucking guy.
Too
Oh my!
here.
I'm sorry. I am obsessed with Bam Adebayo. Nope. Bam Adebayo is having, at least in terms of on-off defensive impact, this is the best year of his career right now in that category. He's everywhere. He's a monster. He's as smart as it gets on that end of the floor. He's tough as shit. If the Heat had just been better most of the year, frankly, like I could see like a real award push for him in this case because he's kind of been the anchor. He has been the anchor of that team the entire year because it's been kind of a wonky Jimmy year. In a lot of ways, obviously,
they've been pretty good on defense
Miami
all
is
year, like that. Not all year, but pretty much. So I feel decent about at least honoring him in this way, right? Like, I mean, is he going to be on All NBA?
Yes.
We'll see because there's no positions anymore. But with this one, I'm like, well, the defense has been what's held steady, and he's been really consistent with it, and so I have no problem with it.
But even then, I think the tricky part with that is. So they're right now they're 10th in defense. Okay, cleaning the glass. They're at 114.3 per 100 possessions. Right. By the way, did you realize Memphis has a top 10 defense? That just is a bizarre thing that we're gonna at the end of this year. 30th in offense. So they're 6th. That's bleak. 10th in defense, which is very good. It is like 6 points worse than the Timberwolves. So it's just like that in itself is just like. Okay, this is good, and it's better than league average by like almost 2 points per 100 possessions, which is a good figure. But it's like leagues behind the Wolves, and then it's like the Cavs and Boston are 2 and 3, and they're like 3 points behind those teams. And there's not really like a good candidate, I think, on Boston or Cleveland this year for this award.
Yeah. I had Jared Allen
third,
just as like a toss-in. I don't really think he's probably the third.
Look at you,
third best defender by any means. But I was like, hey. I'm not going to put Porzingis there. I don't believe it should really go to a perimeter player, so let me honor. And again, defensive rating on the court. I'm not a big on versus off guy compared to where it seems like you're at because I don't really care about how they were when he wasn't playing if I'm giving him an award. But just period in terms of how they defend when each player is out there. Allen's actually close to Bam and one of the only guys kind of even in the territory of Gobert. So I liked that. But for Gobert here, he is allowing opponents to shoot 48% within 6 feet when he's the closest defender. Just absurd.
Fucking absurd.
Bam is obviously pretty damn good in his own right. 58%. So Gobert is 10 percentage points lower. Like, this is crazy. Where do you stand on the Vic candidacy here?
He should be on like your long list. I'm sorry. Like as good as he is and the things he does, and I've seen him in some lists, Brendan, as high as like the runner-up for this award.
It's bananas to me.
Like the Spurs as a defense.
Yes, this is exactly where to go.
Are 24th.
Yeah.
The Spurs just like, I'm sorry, they are not good in any metric. No. We're going to give Victor Wembanyama an award here. We can do that one next. This is not a good defensive team. They give up points at a very high margin. It hasn't. It's when they've been like in the last couple of weeks when they've had like some signs of life. It hasn't been that the defense really got better. It's that the offense is like functioning better, even though they're still 2-5 over that stretch. They're not a good enough defense for me to actually consider him as like a real candidate for this award. He's just not there.
Agreed. If you were to just take the defensive rating of the Spurs when he's on the court, that defense would be equivalent to a league middle unit. Basically what the Lakers are as a team is where Victor Wembanyama and his teammates
Do you have Anthony Davis on your list?
I thought about it.
Did you have AD on your list?
Them being
I have him like
mediocre
4th.
And some of his advanced stats are just a little odd. I just think that team is so it's almost like I feel bad holding some of that against him because I think you just watch and you can obviously tell. I mean, just look at the playoffs last year. The dude is one of the most game-changing presences we have, but it's hard to give it to him. So, yeah, back to Vic. Even you look at how much the efficiency the Spurs allow for their opponent at the rim, still middle of the pack. Like anything you try to slice up to give credit to Victor Wembanyama outside of, hey, when I watch him, he blocks a lot of shots, it doesn't really add up. And I'm one of the biggest Vic supporters. We have kind of covered him more than I think most people intentionally and tried to kind of forced ourselves to watch Spurs basketball and ride this wave and everything. That is going too far to give this award to him as a rookie.
But that said, he's rookie of the year, right?
Yes. And I think I do not think it will be close, as I said a few weeks ago. His production and efficiency rising to kind of meet the individual moments and the hype and everything else, I think locks it up for him. Like the question I think for him all summer last year as we were getting ready to watch him every night in the NBA was the shooting, and he's already shooting 34% from three. Like, I don't think we're ready for... I mean, he's checking all the boxes. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, he is just absurd in every level. I think Chet's a good number 2. This is a good rookie class with some guys that I really like ultimately. With Brandon Pajemski and a Chet Holmgren, and you look through the list there, like there is a lot of quality rookies that are going to be solid in this league for a long time. And Chet's, I think, going to be an all-star. I think that's how good he's going to be. But in terms of what this award is for who this is going to be this year, it's just not close that it's Victor Wembanyama. He has lived up to the hype in so many ways, even if his team is not very good. This is his award. There's not another person I think really should be considered seriously.
Per 36 minutes, 26, 13, 4, 2, and 4.
Sure, that's cool. That's normal. That's just, normal stuff.
He's going to be the next guy to win Defensive Player of the Year and MVP in the same season, right? I mean, like that's coming maybe on his rookie contract. Like, we're there. Yeah, he's sick.
The question, let me ask you this as a hypothetical: who wins? I'm going to give you him versus 2 guys to see if he wins a Defensive Player of the Year before either one of them, and you tell me if he wins it before one of those 2 guys wins it. Does he win a Defensive Player of the Year award before either Bam Adebayo or Evan Mobley?
I think this might be the last year where Vic is not the favorite in March for a while. You know what I mean? I think if they know what the hell they're doing, they will put a real team around him this summer, and he will be. We won't get to use but they're too bad, so he can't get it thing anymore. So Gobert should be counting his lucky stars. He got to that tied with Mutombo and Ben Wallace stat this season because he might not have a chance. So I think yes. I think Vic could win it as soon as next year.
Yeah, I think Defensive Player of the Year, if you get a healthy Mobley season where he's more settled and Bam is Bam, could be really fun. Could be a fun race again next year. Jaren Jackson back. Although, does anyone take Jaren? I kind of forgot about Jaren Jackson, if I'm being honest.
I'm not sure if Basketball Reference or the NBA's official stat books will include the Memphis Grizzlies from 23-24. It may just be wiped. It may just be erased completely, and that's no disrespect to them, but it's been brutal. Do we have any more? No, most improved.
Yeah, we have one more. Yeah, most improved. Which can I predict who you're going to pick? Because I think if I know you, I'm very. I pride myself on Brendan thinking I know you're going to go a lot of the time, and I'm not right all the time. Mm-hmm. But can I guess who I think you picked for this? Did you pick out Prince Sengun of the Houston Rockets?
See, my philosophy with these things. Is I'm very anti the gradual build. So if Tyrese Maxey wins this award, that's fucking dumb.
That's why I thought Sengun has just burst onto the scene. I thought that's where we were gonna go.
He has not burst. He was very good last year, and I think, they literally kind of made moves to build the team around him, right? Like, this was the natural progression.
They tried to... Brendan, you say they made moves to try to build the team around him. These motherfuckers tried to sign Brooke Lopez, okay?
Let me clarify.
They kind of fell into this. Come on.
They does not include Ime Udoka.
Does not include Tillman.
Everybody else, yeah. No, I don't have. I don't have Şengün. I obviously kind of gave away that.
Do you have J-Dub?
Maxey. No, J-Dub's the same thing. I was trying to convince you he could be better than Shea 6 months ago. How could I say he improved?
Yeah.
So who I do have is Kobe White.
Okay, that's a good pick. I actually don't have him, so that's good.
Okay, who do
It's
you
our
have?
only non-chalk. I went with Jonathan Kuminga.
I have him second, and I thought that's who you were going to predict because my last little hype train prior to leaving the country for 10 days was Kuminga. I was very hot on him as I departed the show and gave way to Wes Goldberg. But
Brennan.
What?
He's good, man.
He's good.
Kuminga's just awesome. Kuminga's awesome, and he has actually in terms of has actually improved in in a way we didn't know he was capable of this. He's the answer to this. Kobe White is also going to answer to this, but I think it's Kuminga just because I think he has. I think especially considering we're not that far removed from the stuff about Kerr, him leaking or saying that Kerr didn't trust him and all the stuff like that we're here now with him is frankly remarkable.
It is. He's a weird one though. I mean, his points per game have gone up. A lot of it is minutes based. He's one where you really just have to be watching, right? And the trust from Kerr is a great example to illustrate his improvement. I think the trust from his teammates, and it's a little weird to kind of grade him on the curve of fitting into such a unique system because it's could Kobe White fit into the Warriors system? I don't know, but the way that he plays like a Warrior now, I think is really, really impressive. The IQ leap he's made just from being there for a while and accepting his destiny as I can't force my way out. I might as well fucking cut more or whatever. Is cool.
That's a quote graphic. I can't force one out. I guess I better fucking cut more.
It's a
I hope we do that
for
as a
his
social
IG,
graphic. That's great.
His social people to throw up there for himself. But
yeah.
To sing the praises of Kobe White, who I really do think Kobe White is a perfect most improved player winner to me. And year 5, I remember texting friend of the show Ricky O'Donnell or DMing him at one point it must have been the 2021 season or the 21-22 season, either year 2 or 3 for him, where I was like, is Kobe White just like a seventh man? And that was pretty early in his career when he was finally actually getting real minutes and all that stuff. And I was just like, I don't see it with this guy. I just think he's going to be barely cutting it for minutes. He's small. His decision-making is bad. He's not a consistent scorer. What exactly are you even getting if you're putting him on the court, if that's the case? And now it's starting point guard. I don't know if it's championship level. I mean, we'll see. He's only 23. But to make that hard of a turn from what's going on with this guy, not getting a contract to, okay, wow, he is a centerpiece or at least a building block for us is really impressive. And he's been the only bright spot for that team, so I think that helps too, that it's a nice little story and a good trend for a team that really needs that. So I love it. I've loved Kobe's season. He's a kind of a bigger, less physical Jalen Brunson kind of thing, and I love watching him.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's also now, as you build forward with him, he's on a really, really affordable contract, which is really rare. He's making $11 million this year, he's making 12 next year, and he's making 12.8 the year after when he's 25. Then, we'll see where he's at. That's obviously a lot of basketball between now and then. But Brendan, the fact that he's on a sub mid level contract and he's kind of just blossomed in this way is pretty great. You don't have the fear of contract year bump or anything like that kind of nagging in the back of your head. This is a guy that just figured it out, and for once in their godforsaken recent history, the Chicago Bulls got lucky on when they signed a guy to a contract.
Got lucky that they, timed it correctly. Got lucky that he didn't just completely combust as a prospect and had this kind of post-hype breakout moment. I mean, that's a credit to him. I think it's correct to call it luck on their part. I'm not sure if I'm giving Billy Donovan the credit for developing Kobe White. I think he kind of did it in spite of them. As somebody who watched the Phoenix Suns during the 2010s, I'm very familiar with guys who succeed in spite of the team circumstances, and he qualifies there. So, I hope he wins this one because, I don't like when it's the Maxey, Şengün, Jalen Williams types. It's did this surprise people? I mean, it might be a little higher heights than we thought, but, it's kind of what any of those guys are supposed to do. Maybe it's because they all were, not top 10 picks. Those three? Is that what it is? Is that why we want to give them credit for improving? I don't know, but go Kobe.
The other name I had on my list, on my long list that we didn't mention is just I think Scottie Barnes should at least be in the running. He's had a really, really good year. He's improved on a bunch of different areas all over the floor, including from three. It's obviously weird. He's now hurt as well, but I think he should have been on this list as well.
He's one I wouldn't mind, even though he kind of falls in that category, just because he did regress so much last year. It does feel like there was actually a legitimate, the three-point shooting overall, the pull-up three-point shooting specifically, the different stuff he's flashed as a defensive player, just handling more responsibility. That feels more wow, he really took his game to the next level rather than just, James Harden got traded and Tyrese Maxey went from a good starter to an all-star. Pat on the back for him. He's a max player. So I like that one. Scotty's a good answer. This one is not a 65-game thing either, so Scotty could be in the running, right?
Yeah, 65 game. We're going to have to litigate that at some point, I guess, on the show. But we're not going to do Clutch Player of the Year award. It's okay.
I'm good.
It's okay. I don't care that much. But that's our awards picks. And this has been the Just Basketball Show for March 7th. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. Back next week with more things just basketball, all things hoops here. Cover some games, cover the latest news, all of that and more. Please subscribe, rate, review if you have not already, and enjoy the hoops.